The rounds spark off the rocks inches from Staff Sergeant Dylan Baer's face as he clings to a cliff in Afghanistan's Shok Valley. He's 40 feet up a near vertical rock face with nowhere to hide. Below him, 11 more Green Berets and 100 Afghan commandos are spread across the cliff like targets on a shooting range. In the next 7 hours, 10 of these men will earn Silver Stars. 2 will earn the Medal of Honor, and they'll call in airstrikes on their own position just to survive. But right now, they don't even know if they'll make it to the top of this cliff. This is what an ambush looks like when you can't run, can't hide, and the only cover is the mountain you're hanging from. That was just the first 30 seconds of a battle that would become the most decorated single engagement since Vietnam. ODA 3336 had inserted into this valley hunting an extremist commander, but intelligence failed to mention the 200 fighters dug into positions their grandfathers built fighting the Soviets.
Contact left, contact right, contact everywhere!
Someone screams over the radio. An Afghan commando loses his grip and falls 20 feet, bouncing off rocks before his teammates catch him. An RPG impacts above them, showering the climbers with debris. The ambush is perfect. The insurgents waited until the entire force was committed to the climb, spread out over 200 feet of cliff face before opening fire. No cover, no room to maneuver, just rock and air and bullets. Master Sergeant Scott Ford in the middle of the formation tries to direct return fire, but his men can barely hold on, let alone aim effectively while hanging off a mountain. And it only gets worse as the casualties start piling up. But reaching the top only makes things worse. The interpreter is already down. Baer and Morales are wounded, and the team's medic, Staff Sergeant Ronald Shurer, is still trapped on the cliff below, listening to the desperate radio calls for help. 4 critically wounded Americans need immediate medical attention now. The only problem? To reach them, Shurer will have to cross 30 meters of open ground with 200 insurgents trying to shoot him. Shurer makes the choice that will later earn him the Medal of Honor. He doesn't wait for covering fire or smoke. He just runs. 30 meters of open ground, rounds cracking past his head, impacts kicking up dirt at his feet. Somehow he makes it. 4 critically wounded Americans scattered across the ledge, and he's the only medic. Working completely exposed, Shurer moves between casualties like he's on a training exercise, not a mountainside in hell. Shurer triages with impossible calm. The wounded need immediate evacuation, or they won't make it off this mountain. But there's nowhere for a helicopter to land, and they're taking fire from 3 sides. Meanwhile, Technical Sergeant Zachary Rhyner, the Air Force combat controller, is trying to bring American air power to bear. The problem is the geometry of the fight. The enemy holds positions above them. Any bomb dropped risks hitting the team. Rhyner starts walking the strikes in closer, danger close becoming more dangerous with each iteration. F-15s scream overhead, dropping 500-pounders that shake the mountain. Shrapnel rains down on the team's position, but the insurgents are dug into fortified positions that have existed for decades. The bombs barely slow their rate of fire. Captain Walton watches his men getting taken out one by one and makes a calculation. They can't retreat down the cliff. It would be a disaster. They can't advance up the mountain. The enemy owns every piece of high ground. They can't stay where they are. More fighters are arriving every minute. The radio intercepts are picking up chatter about hundreds of fighters converging on their position.
Drop the next one, danger close.
Walton tells Rhyner.
How close?
Rhyner asks.
On us.
Walton replies. The team had already been calling in strikes at 100 meters, then 80, then 60. Now Walton wants them at 30 meters or less. At that range, the blast over pressure alone could be devastating. But doing nothing means zero chance of making it home. Rhyner on radio, calling in coordinates, points to building on ridge directly above team. F-15 banking hard, lining up attack run. Team pressing against cliff face, covering wounded. Bomb releases, falling toward target. Impact. Massive explosion. Building vaporizing. Debris cloud engulfing team position. Dust clearing, team emerging, still taking fire. The strikes keep coming closer. With each bomb, the team huddles against the cliff, praying the angle of impact throws the blast outward instead of down. Sergeant First Class Seth Howard, the team's sniper, realizes air support alone won't save them. He needs to reach a position where he can engage enemy strongpoints, but that means fighting uphill through the same fire-swept zone that has already claimed 7 casualties. And Captain Walton is about to make a decision that defies all logic. He's going to call in a 2,000-pound bomb directly on his own position. What happened next? We can't show it all here without YouTube slapping this video with a warning. But we can show you on Patreon. To watch the full-length video completely uncensored, subscribe to my Patreon page, where there are no restrictions on what we can tell and show you there. Scan the code or use the link in the description now to watch the full video. Walton's next decision defies every instinct of survival. That 3-story building directly above them, it's the main enemy stronghold. Take it out, maybe break their coordination, but it's only 30 meters from the team's position. A 2,000-pound bomb at that range doesn't leave much margin for error.
Put the JDAM on that building.
Walton orders. Rhyner double-checks the coordinates, triple-checks them.
This is insanity. Send it.
Walton confirms. The team presses against the cliff face like they're trying to become part of the rock. The wounded are dragged as close to the wall as possible. Everyone who can move covers someone who can't. Above them, an F-15 E-Strike Eagle lines up its attack run. The pilot confirms the coordinates one more time. He can see the friendly's danger close to the target.
Cleared hot.
Comes the response. The explosion is catastrophic. The building doesn't just collapse, it disintegrates. The blast wave hits the team like a physical wall, driving them into the cliff face. Debris rains down for what feels like minutes but is only seconds. But the gamble works, partially. The main enemy position is gone. The volume of fire decreases, but it doesn't stop. The insurgents are too well distributed, too dug in. And now the team has another problem. Sergeant Matthew Williams realizes the wounded won't make it if they don't get medical evacuation immediately. The only way to get them out is to carry them back down the cliff to a position where helicopters might be able to hover long enough to hoist them up under fire. Williams doesn't ask for permission. He grabs Bear first, the most critically wounded, throws him over his shoulders, and starts down the cliff. It's a 60-foot vertical descent with a 200-pound man on his back while taking fire. One slip means both men fall 10,000 feet down a mountain. Above, Staff Sergeant Howard finally reaches his sniper position. The trained marksman begins doing what he does best, delivering precise, aimed fire at enemy leadership. Through his scope, he can see fighters preparing for another massed assault. One by one, he neutralizes them. An enemy commander trying to coordinate an RPG team, down. A machine gunner setting up a new position, neutralized. It's not enough to win the fight, but it's enough to prevent the team from being overrun, for now at least. That is because, after multiple hours of combat, the team is almost out of ammunition. The wounded are running out of time, and the helicopters coming to extract them will have to hover in a shooting gallery where every insurgent in the valley is waiting. The question is no longer how many casualties they'll take, but if they will make it out of here at all. For the next 3 hours, the time fights on like this. 7 hours of continuous combat at 10,000 feet with 4 critically wounded, their interpreter gone, and everyone else carrying at least minor wounds from one thing or another. Williams has made 4 trips up and down the cliff, each time carrying a wounded teammate while under fire. The medevac birds are finally inbound. Apache gunships leading, Chinooks following. But the landing zone is still hot. The insurgents know the Americans are trying to leave, and they're pouring everything they have at the evacuation site. RPGs, machine guns, AK fire from every direction. The first helo comes in fast, flaring hard, rotors beating the thin mountain air. The helicopter takes multiple hits, hydraulic fluid streaming from bullet holes. The pilots fight to keep control as they climb away from the valley. A second bird comes in for more wounded. Then a third, each taking fire, each pilot holding their hover just long enough to get Americans and Afghan commandos aboard before pulling pitch and climbing to safety. Staff Sergeant John Walting stays until the end, directing the evacuation. Howard maintains his overwatch, still dropping insurgents who try to advance on the landing zone. Rhyner keeps the airstrikes coming, maintaining a wall of steel between the enemy and the extraction site. Master Sergeant Scott Ford coordinates the Afghan commandos, making sure none are left behind. As the last helicopter loads, the team does a final head count. Everyone accounted for, American and Afghan. Williams is one of the last to board, having spent the entire battle either fighting uphill or carrying wounded downhill. As the helicopter lifts off, enemy fighters rush their abandoned positions.
I'm going to need you to set up the bed.
After the battle, 10 silver stars would be awarded, the most for a single battle since Vietnam. Shurer and Williams would later receive the Medal of Honor. Rhyner would get the Air Force Cross. But in that moment, as the helicopters climbed away from the Shok Valley, none of that mattered. They were alive. They'd gone into the hornet's nest, been ambushed by a force that outnumbered them 10-1, fought for 7 hours on a cliff face with no cover, and brought everyone home. Sometimes that's what victory looks like. Not conquering ground or capturing targets, but simply refusing to leave anyone behind. Bye for now.